David Johnson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. First things first, I went to the comprehensive school at the end of my road, which had a 21% GCSE pass rate in the years I was there, before they included English and maths. So it would have been a single-digit pass rate school without that, and I don't have any children, so none of them are going to private school. I personally think we obsess too much about private schools in this country. Yeah. I think they provide an excellent standard of education, and that appeals to parents not just in this country but internationally as well. I think some do lots to justify their charitable status. I think some don't do enough, and they should be doing more. I think our leading professions shouldn't have the huge proportion of people who are privately educated when they only educate 7% of the country in them, but that's as much about those professions as it is about those schools. So I don't stand here as some great advocate or champion for private schools. But I know that the people who've engaged in this debate have made a strong case that this policy from the Labour Party wouldn't save any money to be distributed elsewhere at all, might even cost the state more than they're being charged at the moment. I know that Sir Peter Lample from the social mobility charity, the Sutton Trust, said if you wanted to increase the inequities inherent in the public school system, you couldn't devise many quicker ways to do so. Yeah. I know that many people have commented on the complications this might provide for other areas of education which are also not being charged these taxes. But I also know why the Labour Party is doing this. It fires up members opposite. Well, it doesn't fire them up as much as I thought, looking at the empty benches opposite. But they think it's a way of also getting at the Prime Minister and the leader of our party. And that's quite curious, because when you go through the history of the Labour Party, only 3 leaders have won an election in the post-war period, and 2 of them were the products of boarding schools. And when you go through the key figures in the Labour Party over and over again, you find the privately educated. Gateskill, Foote, the leader of the opposition, went to a school that became a private school. So while private schools haven't played any role in my life, where would the Labour Party have been without them? Where would the Labour Party have been without the alumni of our private schools? They would have won even fewer elections. And I, therefore, we talk about this policy. My main problem with this policy, by the way, it isn't that I'm a great defender of private schools. It isn't that it won't save that much money. It isn't that it might make the problem worse or that it would make the Labour Party's electoral history worse. My problem with this policy is that we've waited 3 years for education policy from the Labour Party. Yeah. And this is what they've come up with. Yeah.
Another select.
And we want to talk about records, talk about 13 years of Conservative government. I will gladly stand by this party's record on education in those 13 years, which I know my honourable friend the Minister is going to lay out in good detail when he sums up. But if we want to talk about records, let's talk about the Labour Party's record on education in the last 3 years, because everybody elected, the Labour Party want us to forget this, but everybody elected on that side of the House stood on a manifesto to abolish SATs, abolish academies, and abolish Ofsted, all of which have done a huge amount for disadvantaged children in this country. They want us to forget that when schools close, and their allies in the National Education Union said teachers shouldn't teach a full timetable or routinely mark work in this period, the Labour Party said nothing about that. When they produced a 200-point checklist for schools to reopen, the Labour Party said nothing about that. They want us to forget how long it took them to say that schools were safe. Does everybody remember that? Yeah. We used to have every front bench spokesperson say, come on, Leader of the Opposition, come on, Shadow spokesperson, say that schools are safe and that children can go back to them. And it took them so long to do so. So we wait 3 years for policy, and this is all the Labour Party can come up with. Now, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe this was the only policy, so I went to the Labour Party website, because I thought there must be other education policies on that website. The website is bare. The only thing remotely relating to education is about breakfast clubs in primary schools. Now, I support breakfast clubs in primary schools. The schools I was a governor of had them. They're very effective. But that's not a big enough policy for the whole of our education system. We have big reforms that we've undertaken in this period, and we've still got big challenges, some of them decades old, some of them post-COVID. We need more than this. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the Leader of the Opposition's speech last week, because the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition both set out what they wanted for the country in their speeches last week. Prime Minister referred to education 12 times in his speech last week. Tony Blair used to say education, education, education. So I counted up the number of times the Leader of the Opposition said education in his speech last week, where he was setting out for the country what he wanted to do. Guess how many times it appears? 0.
0, really? That's
0.
appalling.
Not once. Not once in a speech telling the country what your priorities are and what you're going to do for the country does the word education appear. 0. And 0, Madam Deputy Speaker, is precisely what the Labour Party has to offer the country on education. Yeah!